We'll be going over Form SSA-10, Application for Widows or Widowers Insurance Benefits. We won't go too far into detail about when you should apply for widows or widowers benefits, but we'll operate under the assumption that you were married to someone who was receiving Social Security benefits under their record, and then this application would be for consideration to receive benefits based on their earnings record. So this is an 8-page document. There's about 6 pages of actual application, and the Paperwork Reduction Act statement at the back of this form says it should take your average applicant about 15 to 20 minutes to gather the facts and then complete this form. So you may find that if you're having to apply for benefits, if you have a financial advisor or a financial planner, you might be working with that person. However, if you chose to file for benefits yourself, you can certainly do that. You can do that at the Social Security Administration office if you schedule an appointment. But this video will kind of walk you through the mechanics just so that you can see for yourself. We'll start in line 1. We'll assume that I am the deceased wage earner. We'll enter my Social Security number, and then we'll assume that my wife, Tanya, is applying for widow's benefits based on my earnings information. And in this field, I would put my wife's maiden name, since that's different from the name that she currently uses. So in line 3, we'll enter the date that I died, or sorry, in line 3, we'll enter the date of birth my birthday. So my birthday. And then we'll enter the date of death. We'll just assume that I died relatively recently. And then we'll just assume that I died in my home in Tampa, Florida. So in line 5, you'll enter the state or foreign country where the deceased had a fixed permanent home at the time of death. In this case, I died in my home in Tampa, Florida. So in line 6, you'll answer the question about whether or not the deceased filed an application for Social Security benefits, whether it's under retirement benefits, whether it was under disability, supplemental income, or if I was on Medicare. So if you don't know the answer to that, you would check this box here in line 6A. However, if you know for a fact that I did, then you would check the yes box. You would fill out lines 6B and 6C. If the answer to this question is no, then you would simply check no here and move on to item 7. You don't need to complete the rest of these fields. But we're operating under the assumption that I did do this, and we'll enter the name that I used to file my benefits. And then since we used my benefits, we'll put in my Social Security number again. So obviously, if the deceased could have filed under a different set of benefits, maybe it was an ex-spouse, who knows? But odds are pretty high that you might be completing this information from whatever was in item 1, and that's all right. So you should only answer item 7 if the deceased died before full retirement age or prior to when you're past full retirement age within the past 4 months. So if, say, I died at age 70, then clearly this isn't prior to full retirement age or prior to 1 year past full retirement age within the past 4 months. So we will answer no to this question, but if we did answer yes, then you would enter the date that the deceased became unable to work. So was the deceased in the active military or naval service after September 7th, 1939 and before 1968? This includes the reserves, National Guard, active duty, or active duty for training. So if there's any affiliation with the military while in active service, then you would check yes. You would enter dates of service, and then you would enter whether or not someone received a benefit from another federal agency. Most likely this might be like VA disability benefits, for example. So we'll put in that yes, I was on active duty at some point. So only the month and the year, so and then I received a benefit, right? So you can check yes or no, and you don't have to answer any further. All right, on to page 2. So about how much did the deceased earn from employment and self-employment during the year of death? So only answer this question if the death occurred in the past 2 years. If, for example, you're a widow, but you waited 5 years to apply for widow's benefits based on your deceased husband's earnings history, then you would not answer item 9 if, for example, the deceased has been dead for longer than 2 years. So only answer this if you need to. For item 10, you'll answer the question whether or not the deceased had wages or self-employment income covered under Social Security in all years from 1978 through last year. So if yes, then you don't need to answer item 10B. If no, then you would select the years where the decedent did not have wages or self-employment income covered under Social Security. So we'll check yes for this for simplicity's sake. Item 11, if applicable, means that you're not submitting evidence of the deceased earnings that are not yet on his or her earnings record, and that you understand these earnings will automatically be included within 24 months. Any increase in your benefits will be retroactive. So what that means is if the decedent had earnings within the past 2 years and died, those earnings might not be reflected on the most current Social Security earnings statement as of today. However, when those earnings are eventually reported to the Social Security Administration, then there's a possibility that those earnings may increase your Social Security benefits. If that's the case, then anything that would have applied will be reviewed retroactively, and up to 2 years of those benefits will be paid out to you. Again, when the Social Security Administration processes this paperwork. So item 12 contains information about the deceased's other marriages. So if you're applying based on your deceased spouse's earnings history, but that was the only marriage either of you had, then you don't need to complete item 12. You can simply go to item 13. So we'll assume this was the only marriage. However, if the decedent had previously been married, or if the decedent had been married after you and you were divorced, then you would enter the information about the decedent's spouse, when and where they were married, how that marriage ended, when and where that marriage ended, and then who performed the marriage, date of birth of the spouse or their age, if the spouse had previously died, and then spouse's social security number. So this information is pretty important because a decedent could have earnings history that might justify their current spouse being able to draw social security benefits, and any spouse where the marriage lasted at least 10 years, or if the marriage ended due to the death of the spouse. So, and if a former spouse applies for benefits based on your deceased spouse's earnings history, it impacts you in no way. So, to the extent that you know or are aware of other marriages, then you would insert that information here. There's room enough for 2 additional marriages. And then if you need to use additional space, there is a remarks section towards the end of this form. And it's a lot of blank space. You can enter the similar information if the decedent had subsequent marriages that don't fit in these fields. In item 13, you'll answer the question about whether or not there is a surviving parent or parents who were receiving support from the decedent at the time of the death, or at the time that the deceased became disabled according to Social Security law. So if that yes, then you'll need to enter their name and address in the remarks section. For part 2, you're going to switch gears and start giving information about yourself. So you'll enter the name or the state or the foreign country where you were born. Since we're answering on my wife's behalf, we'll use New York. That's the state she was born in. So did she have a public record of her birth before age 5? Yes. But if you select no, then you would say yes or no as to whether or not there's a religious record of your birth before age 5. So if you check yes here, you can just skip. And then you would enter information about your marriage to the deceased. So all right. All right. So I simply entered my information. If you were remarried after this, then you would enter similar information about any subsequent marriages. If none, then you would enter none. And then same here, if you had any marriages that lasted at least 10 years, and this also accounts if you got married, got divorced, and then remarried within 1 calendar year, as long as the combined marriages are at least 10 years, then you would be able to document this marriage here. And the reason why you want to capture this information is because when the Social Security Administration processes this form, they're going to see which sets of benefits might be applicable to your situation, and then they're going to pick the one that gives you the biggest benefit. So if you ended up being married 3 times, and each of those marriages were qualified where you could apply for benefits based on your spouse's earnings record, then instead of just automatically assuming your deceased husband, your current husband, would be the highest benefits, the Social Security Administration will actually review everything you might be eligible for and pick the one that makes the most sense. So again, if you have any other marriages, use the space in the remarks section to document more information. So if you're applying for divorced spouses benefits, then you can skip item 16. But if you were married, then you would answer yes or no. Were you living together at the same address when the deceased died? I'm going to say yes, but if no, then you would document this here. So answer honestly. If for some reason someone was hospitalized, then you would enter that the decedent was hospitalized temporarily when they passed away, and then you would just enter all of this information in. In item 17, you'll answer the question about whether or not either you or someone on your behalf has ever filed an application for any kind of Social Security benefits. So it could be Social Security benefits, like retirement benefits. It could be other spousal benefits. It could be disability, supplemental security income, which is for lower income applicants and special situations, or Medicare. So if you've never done this, you check no, and then you go to item 18. If yes, then you would check yes. You would enter the name of the person whose record you filed an application under and their Social Security number. So for this, we'll just say no. So if you are full retirement age or older, then do not answer question 18. However, if you are not full retirement age or older, then you'll need to answer this. Were you, during the past 14 months, have you been unable to work because of disease or illnesses, injuries, or conditions? Then you would answer either yes or no. If no, you go to 19. If yes, then you would enter the date that you were unable to work. We'll answer no. Were you personally in the military with the same affiliation that was in the previous military question? So active military or naval service after September 7th, 1939 and before 1968. So this includes reserves, National Guard, either active duty or active duty for training orders. If for some reason, there's multiple ways that you can be on active duty, but basically any active duty activation, then you would select yes. But if not, then you select no. And Tanya did not work in the military, so we'll just put no. Did you or the deceased work in the railroad industry for 5 years or more? No. Did you have Social Security under another country's Social Security system? If yes, then you would list the country in item 21B. We'll select no here. In item 22A, you'll answer the question about whether or not you've ever qualified for, or if you expect to qualify for, an annuity or a pension based on your own employment and earnings for the federal government or for a state government. Any of these programs that are not covered under Social Security. So Social Security benefits are not necessarily the same as government pensions. So you'll answer yes or no accordingly. If you answer yes, then you would have to check whether or not you receive that government pension or annuity, whether you received a lump sum, whether you've applied for and you're expecting a decision to come back to you, or whether you have not applied for, in which case you would enter the date in the future that you might expect to start, or if you don't know, then you can simply type in unknown, right? So this next field is Medicare information. So you can use this form to apply for Medicare Part B, which is the medical insurance part. You should, if you are within 3 months of the age of 65, or if you're older, you should definitely take advantage of applying for Medicare Part B. There may be a late enrollment penalty in a lot of circumstances, unless you specifically have talked to someone and you understand that you're under an exception for applying for Medicare Part B after the age of 65. For example, if you're covered under an employer-sponsored healthcare program, or if you're covered as a spouse under an employer-sponsored healthcare program, then you don't necessarily need to apply for Medicare Part B until you or your spouse leaves that job or is no longer covered under that health care plan. But most likely you'll probably be checking yes, and then the Social Security Administration will help you with the Medicare Part B application. So you should answer item 24 only if the deceased died before this year. So how much were your earnings last year? How much do you expect your earnings to be this year? So you would enter this information based on your actual work history. We'll assume that my wife did not work outside of the home. And if you did enter a number, let's imagine that she earned $10,000, then she would place an X in a block for each month in which you did not earn more than a certain amount of income. So how work affects your benefits really applies to people that are not yet at full retirement age. So there's a certain monthly limit, and it's adjusted for inflation. So depending on the year, you'll have to research to see exactly how much that limitation is. And this includes either employment or self-employment. Those are exempt months where the Social Security Administration won't evaluate your earnings if you file before full retirement age. And then under line 25, you would then say that how much you would expect your earnings to be this year. Again, don't answer item 24 if the deceased died before this year. And the reason why is because there can be a conflict or a clawback when the Social Security Administration evaluates your widow benefits versus what you were entitled to. In item 26, only answer this if you are in the last 4 months of your taxable year. So September, October, November, and December. Again, if your taxable year is a calendar year. So if you expect to earn, a significant amount of money, then you would have to enter whatever amount of money you plan to earn. Again, I'll put in 0 for my wife, who does not expect to work outside the home. But if you entered some information, then you would have to put a block in here. Now, if no months are expected to be exempt, then you would hit none. If all months are exempt, then you would put all. And then item 27, you can skip this if your tax return isn't normally due on that April 15th deadline because you have a different tax filing year. So that would be a fiscal year. A common example of that would be a tax year that ends on September 30th. That's the federal government's fiscal year. So some businesses do a fiscal year tax year instead of a calendar year. Most individual taxpayers file their taxes based on a calendar year. So if you don't know, you're probably safe just leaving this blank. You don't even have to fill this in. If you're full retirement age or older, you can skip this. But if you're under full retirement age, then you can either select that you want your benefits as soon as possible. If you're full retirement age or will be within 4 months, you can select this. This is your full benefit, you know, at the earliest possible time, as long as your benefit is not reduced. And then C is you can pick a date that you want benefits to start. You might either have a higher initial payment or a higher continuing payment if you waited, but you're choosing not to. So those are your choices. If you want to maximize your benefits, you would simply state, I want to wait, or I want benefits within 4 months. So if you're not applying for benefits at all, then you wouldn't be selecting this. But if you're applying for benefits, then you need to decide when you want them. And if you want to maximize your benefits, but you're not quite at full retirement age, then you may want to take this as an opportunity to pause your application until you get more information about what you're giving up. So in general terms, the longer you wait for your benefits as a widow or widower, you can apply as early as age 60, but you will not get your maximum benefits until you reach full retirement age. So this is what you're considering. Now, unlike retirement benefits, where you can still earn retirement benefit credits by delaying your benefits past full retirement age up until age 70, there is no similar provision for widow or widower benefits. So when filing for Social Security retirement benefits, a lot of people wait until age 70 and then apply because that's the maximum retirement benefits. In the case of widow or widower's benefits, the maximum that you can get is based on your full retirement age. So answer 29 if you're at least 61 years and 8 months, but do you want this to be considered an application for your own earnings record? So if you think your own earnings record would be higher than your, what you would receive under spousal benefits, then select yes. If not, then select no. And then in the remarks section, this is the placeholder for all of those things like additional marriages and things of that nature that we discussed earlier. If you need more space, then you can add additional copies as you need. In this section, you'll enter your direct deposit payment information. So your routing transit number is a 9-digit number that's assigned individually unique to each financial institution. So ironically, my routing transit number is the same as my Social Security number in this example. And then your account number is whatever your checking or savings account number happens to be. So we'll just say mine is 1, and it's a checking account. And then you check either if you want to enroll in Direct Express, or if you've been refused for direct deposit, then you would check that. And then here you'll sign this. You need to sign this in some sort of ink, most likely blue or black ink. You'll date the application, and then you'll give the Social Security Administration a phone number that you can be reached during the day. You'll enter your mailing address, And then if you happen to live outside the country, then you would enter that. As with most Social Security forms, you can sign this application by marking an X in the signature field. If this is marked with an X, then you will need 2 witnesses that personally know you to sign here and give their addresses. So we'll assume that you signed your full name and we don't need witnesses. Now, if you file this with the Social Security office, you should receive a claim receipt. So this is kind of important because it'll contain phone numbers that you'll need to call before you get your award notice, and then after you receive a notice of award, you might get transferred to a different office so that you can talk to that. And then the Social Security office, the date that they receive the claim, and then some estimate of how many days it's going to take to get some information back from the Social Security Administration. And then you'll see these fields filled out as well. So the bottom of the form contains information about the Privacy Act. So as with all government forms, the Social Security Administration does not require you to submit any of this information. However, the information that you do submit can be shared. This notice outlines the ways that the Social Security Act and the Privacy Act allow the federal government to share your information. So contractors and other federal agencies that help the Social Security Administration run its programs. There might be third parties that may need information based on certain entitlements under Social Security. And as I mentioned, the Paperwork Reduction Act says that it should take about 15 minutes to read the instructions, gather the facts, and then answer the questions. And then on the back, some guidance on what happens if you don't provide accurate information or if you don't provide timely updates. So if you change your mailing address, then you should probably notify the Social Security Administration so you can get your checks forwarded to your new address. If you're if you're a resident or your immigration status changes, then you'll need to notify the Social Security Administration if you're outside the United States for 30 days or more. If one of your beneficiaries dies or cannot handle benefits, or if you have a change in your work history. And then here's some changes that you should report if for some reason your work status changes. So if you change your marital status, if you go to jail, if there's a custody issue, if you have an outstanding warrant. And then for disability applicants, then there's some verbiage about when you need to notify the Social Security Administration, like if you go to work or if your medical condition continues. And for anyone that's under full retirement age, the law requires that a report of earnings is filed with the Social Security Administration within 3 months and 15 days after the end of a taxable year where you earn more than the exempt amount. So you can contact the Social Security Administration to file that report. Otherwise, the SSA will use the earnings reported by your employer or your self-employment tax return to conduct the earnings test. That was what we were discussing earlier when we were going through some of these questions about your earnings. So if you're under full retirement age, your work and earnings history can be taken into consideration for benefits purposes. Once you reach full retirement age, then that's no longer the case. There's some information at the bottom about what happens if you are earning over the exempt amount. There's a publication 05-10069 how work affects your benefits. You can read a little bit more information, and you probably should before, if you're under full retirement age, still working, and you think you might be over the exempt amount. So that's all we have for this form. It's a lot to digest, but it should be fairly straightforward to complete for most applicants. If you'd like, we've written an article that walks you step by step through this form to help kind of break down each item line by line so that you can understand it. If you like our articles, please subscribe to our newsletter. You can find an email opt-in for in every article that we have on our website. Simply go to teachmepersonalfinance.com, type in Form SSA-10 in the search bar, and you should see the article. And if you like our YouTube videos, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And as always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please post them either in the comments section or send me an email. As always, thank you very much. Have a great day.